we're enabling our customers to deploy apps. And these enterprise applications can, for example, directly connect the payload on the drone, like a gas leak sensor, for example, with an enterprise resource management system. So you can directly detect gas leaks and schedule a maintenance with all the contextual data you have. And the end operator can implement this end to end.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 269. Is there a better way for enterprise companies to manage large drone fleets? Today's guests believe there is. Lorenz Meier and Kevin Sartori are co-founders of Auterion, an enterprise drone software platform. Autorion's goal is to be the drone software platform of choice for enterprises and drone manufacturers, while accelerating the industry by driving forward open standards to create a common, future-proof roadmap. This gives everyone involved, whether vendors or buyers, confidence that they will achieve a return on their investment and access to a wide choice of partners and integrations in an open ecosystem. Lorenz Meier holds a Ph.D. in drone software architecture at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. In 2008, Lorenz created and released the Pixhawk autonomous drone autopilot to the open source community. Lorenz is also the creator of Pixhawk, MAVLink and QGroundControl, today's most commonly used flight hardware and autopilot software. He has been working in the drone and robotics industry for the past 10 years, and in 2017 was nominated MIT 35 Innovators Under 35 by MIT Technology Review for the development of Pixhawk. Lorenz is also a board member and community director at Dronecode, the organization that defines the open source standards in the UAV industry. Kevin Sartori holds a master's in robotics from ETH Zurich and an MBA from UC Berkeley Haas School of Business. He has been working in the drone industry since 2008, when he was researching optimal control algorithms as part of the early Pixhawk team at ETH Zurich. In 2014, he moved to the San Francisco Bay Area and joined 3D Robotics, first as an enterprise project manager and later as senior product marketing manager for SiteScan. He helped the company transition from a consumer hardware company to an enterprise software as a service company and led the marketing and channel sales efforts. Today at Auterion, Kevin combines his consulting skills with his knowledge of the drone industry and technology to help drone manufacturers and drone service providers adopt new technologies, change business models, and bring new products to market. In early 2020, Auterion released Skynode, which when combined with Auterion Pixhawk, enables drone manufacturers to rapidly enter new markets by making their products compatible with an ecosystem of payloads, components, services, and workflow integrations. In short, it gives companies the tools they need to deploy large fleets of drones. In this edition of the Drone Radio Show, Lorenz and Kevin talk about Auterion's open source platform. They'll also talk about Skynode and its applications and how enterprise companies can better manage a fleet of drones. But before we hear from Lorenz and Kevin, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. Now let's find out how an open source platform can help enterprise companies manage their fleet of drones with Lorenz Meier and Kevin Sartori of Auterion. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Lorenz and Kevin to introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Lorenz, and I'm one of the two co-founders of Auterion. And before founding the company, I founded now 12 years ago, a number of open source projects that turned out to be really pivotal for the drone industry. And those include PX4, it includes the Pixhawk autopilot, MAVLink, QGroundControl. For the more technical folks and for the people who are longer in the industry, these will sound extremely familiar. And they're essentially the same as what Linux is for the enterprise compute industry.
This is Kevin. I'm the other co-founder at Auterion, and I was part of the initial Pixhawk team back at ETH in 2009. And from then on, I saw my sweet spot between business and technology. First, as a strategy consultant at BCG, where I helped large companies optimize their processes using the latest technology. And then when I moved to the Bay Area at 3DR, where I helped the company make the transition from a consumer hardware company to a B2B software company, first as a product manager and then as leading the go-to market of their product side scan.
Lorenz, can you tell us about Auterion? What does the company do?
Auterion is, as a company, not too dissimilar from Red Hat in the Linux space. Now, if you're not deep into Linux, that's not super helpful, but Red Hat is in the background enabling a majority of enterprise businesses. 99% of the Fortune 500 companies are using Red Hat. So we're operating and offering a software platform that allows you to run big deployments of drones, whether you are a drone manufacturer, an OEM, or if you are an operator, like a larger enterprise, for example. And Red Hat is doing the same for servers. And from a technology perspective, though, we have nothing to do with Linux servers or anything like that. We are a little bit more like Android when it comes to technology. So Auterion is a software platform that runs on the drone. So we have lots of software on drones, flight control software, obstacle avoidance software, camera control software, which all forms together our software stack on board. And then we have a cloud service that allows these vehicles to upgrade their software. You can see how they're doing, how many flights they're doing, if they have healthy sensors, if they need to be brought in for maintenance. And that's why we talk about Auterion as a whole platform, because it's neither a cloud service nor just onboard software. We provide everything you need to operate a drone fleet.
What differentiates Auterion from others in this space?
So we're doing something really new, and that's very exciting for two reasons. Number one, it's of course always great to build new things and pioneer, similar to what Android pioneered in the smartphone space, doing open source operating systems, open source software for drones at scale. And the second reason is it's always quite interesting how we need to explain and position that in the market, because it's so new that no, there isn't a clear competitor or anything similar. I would say the closest in terms of operation, to name the elephant in the room, is of course what DJI is offering with their proprietary software and with their own cloud services. But they are bundling that to their specific hardware. So the one big difference of Auterion to DJI is that we can run on many different types of drones, including vertically taking off planes, so-called VTOLs, and from different manufacturers. And that makes us really unique in the industry.
In regard to your primary customers, are they the manufacturers or enterprise businesses?
We go to market in two ways. One, as you mentioned, is directly with the drone manufacturers. We see them as partner because they help us bring to market a full solution that includes our software on the drone and in the cloud, but as well a system with a ground controller, with a payload, a camera, so that the end user can then do whatever they want to do in their enterprise using drone technology. So that's the first way. The second way is go to market directly to the end user. So that is an enterprise that deploys a large fleet, or it can also be a government entity that deploys a large fleet.
Auterion recently released a piece of hardware called Skynode. First of all, what is it, and why does a software company produce a piece of hardware?
That's a great question, and it seems initially, if you look at it like an outlier, like something that software companies do not do. But if you look deeper, it's actually happening again and again and again. So the Android team at Google launched a Google Nexus phone, which for many years was the sort of reference platform, very similar to Skynode, but you could also buy it. Now, Google has the Pixel for similar reasons. Then the Microsoft software team also had to launch their own tablet PC because that was a new category. Their partners didn't know how to make them, how to create a great user experience. That's what brought us the Microsoft Surface. And the same is true for augmented reality headsets and all sorts of things. So the reason companies do this is that you want to create a really seamless user experience. And sometimes you need hardware for that. Sometimes you need a very specific performance from that hardware or a specific level of integration. And it's not available on the market. And you also want to be able to enable multiple hardware manufacturers. So the least conflicted company to do that is then the software company to provide a reference. And so that's what Google did with the Nexus phones. And this is what we're doing with Skynode. So Skynode is unique in that it deeply integrates flight controller, mission computer, and the internet into one really tiny box. It's not larger than the previous flight controllers that were in comparison dumb. And we really needed to do this because we couldn't buy it on the market.
How does Skynode extend your software? Or in other words, what does it enable drones to do that we aren't able to do otherwise?
It's enabling a number of things that were not really possible before through being able to run more complex software on board and being more online or being online at all. So we're enabling our customers to deploy apps in the form of Docker containers. And these enterprise applications can, for example, directly connect the payload on the drone, like a gas leak sensor, for example, with an enterprise resource management system. So you can directly detect gas leaks and schedule a maintenance with all the contextual data you have. And the end operator can implement this end to end, the same way as an enterprise can have its own app on a smartphone. So completely new pattern. Nobody does this, not even DJI. And the second aspect is just it's designed to be online. It's not mandatory, it's optional, but it allows you to get real-time flight data. It allows you to do real-time predictive maintenance. You can be on top of any operational issues with the system or with the drone, and you can have real-time data. For example, you can model the environment that you're flying above as you're still flying the mission, which means that everything is a lot faster and more consistent.
So, for example, if I'm inspecting a pipeline for leaks, Skynode gives the drone the ability to automatically schedule maintenance when it detects a leak without me ever really being part of the process. Is that sort of how it works?
That's correct. And it's also really important to understand where the industry is standing today, because we're all so used to smartphones and apps and all that. But in the drone industry, it's still normal that you do your mission, then you download the images from the drone or the sensor data from your sensor, sometimes involving SD cards that you need to pull out of one device and stick into a laptop. And it's super manual. It's counterintuitive how manual it is.
Do you have any real-world examples of companies that are using Skynode?
Yes, we do. So when we launched Skynode 2 weeks ago, we as well announced our first partner to bring Skynode to market. That is GE Aviation, one of the legacy aerospace company in the space. They build autopilots for the larger cellular airplanes as the Boeing 787 or Boeing 777. And together with them, we'll be bringing to market a version of Skynode called Skynode RTA. That stands for Runtime Assurance. And that version will offer an additional safety feature, runtime safety, that allows end customers, for example, logistic companies or companies doing BV loss flights, to get an easier way to apply for waivers, so a streamlined process to apply for waivers.
What's been the response from potential users or application developers?
The reason we did Skynode is because we saw too much friction for the adoption of our software. Partially because companies had really trouble putting the hardware required together. And the other reason was that it needed to be just more integrated from our side. And now with introducing Skynode, what we did was to simplify our offering a lot towards our end customers. So now it's a box, you can buy it, you can install it. It's really clear. You don't have to go into depth how to install software and what hardware is supported. It all becomes a very simple transaction. And so we have seen the same number of inbounds in a week that we saw in a year. And that speaks to how much more accessible our offering has become for our customers.
How do you envision Skynode being adopted by users?
I think the first customers of Skynode that we'll see are mainly drone manufacturers that would, on one side, either take the Skynode product and integrate that into their systems, or for high volume manufacturers, we offer the reference design. So you can build your own implementation of it for smaller drones or for drones at volumes. So we'll probably see those as being our first adopters. The consequence of that is that the end user, a construction site manager or inspection manager, they will then be able to buy those systems once they come to market. And as with the example of G Aviation before, we're working together a number of drone manufacturers that will come to market in the next couple of months with vehicles that are using Skynode as their reference design, integrated into their system, and will be completely compatible with the Auterion platform. However, we also saw a huge spike in requests from drone service providers, or companies that today still often build their own systems. So they have some expertise in-house. They might be using already open source software. And I think they will have the capabilities to integrate the Skynode enterprise version, the box, by themselves and to build their own systems, basically using Skynode.
Going back to the smartphone analogy, it sounds like you're creating, for lack of a better word, a smartphone capability that connects the drone to the internet. And just like smartphones, developers will be able to create a variety of apps that can be used with drones depending on what the business wants.
Exactly. So we're building not only a company, of course, Auterion, but a whole ecosystem around us, because we know that we can't do everything by ourselves, and we know when to leave value on the table. For example, as the apps you mentioned, we offer an SDK so that third-party developers could build their own app that run either on the ground or on the drone itself. But we also work together with component and technology manufacturers as camera companies. An example is Sony. We have integrated with the Sony SDK so that Skynode user can plug and play specific Sony camera models and have direct control of the camera parameters and access the SD card so they can pull images of the camera. And that is just an example of how we operate. And the value to the end user is that they have access to a whole ecosystems of payloads, of components, of sensors, but as well of third-party applications.
How significant is Skynode and what it offers to the drone industry?
I think the key thing is that it's really a pivotal moment for the industry because we're enabling now third-party applications on board. And we're doing that on base of an open platform So integrations that were not possible before in the enterprise space and unthinkable are suddenly really easy. And that's really the same thing as what happened to enterprise computing when Linux, for example, entered the industry, and these old school mainframe computers, which had software and hardware from the same vendor, went away and were replaced with something a lot more flexible, a lot more agile. So that's really important to us that that's clear, because it's not just a better flight controller or anything like that. It's a completely new class.
Each of you have 10 years or more in the drone industry. In your opinion, how has autonomous operations evolved over those 10 years?
I just read an article saying that the autonomous driving industry now expects autonomous driving to not happen before 2030, which is not a big surprise to me, because it's really, really hard to model the integration with other traffic. In terms of autonomy on drones, it's fundamentally different, because we're fortunate that the rules of the lower sky haven't been written yet. There is no system that we need to totally integrate into, except for general aviation, which generally is flying a little higher. And we have just complete flexibility in that. So my personal guess is that drones will be the first autonomous network operating at larger scale, earlier than autonomous driving, earlier than delivery rovers or similar things. But there's also work left, in particular on the regulatory front. Right now, the autonomous flight capabilities of drones are well ahead of what is legally possible, but that's changing really quickly right now.
Do you consider Auterion to be an autonomous flight platform or a platform for the general UAV industry?
We're considering ourselves to be the autonomy platform for small mobile robotics. So we're not even limiting ourselves to drones. We can operate delivery rovers or boats or whatever is moving with the same software. And yes, that's definitely the ambition.
What are some of the challenges in developing an autonomous flight platform?
In terms of basic autonomous operation, this is something that we can do reliably today. Like, we can fly 50 miles without a pilot, with autonomous fail-safe maneuvers, with monitoring the airspace for traffic, with doing safety landings if a helicopter or plane would approach. And on that front, it's really mostly regulation required that clarifies what exactly should happen when, what the permission structure looks like, what kind of insurance and other regulations you need to have. In terms of flying in more crowded airspaces or flying with other drones in close proximity, there's still work to be done. But radar technology, LiDAR technology is developing really quickly. So I'm also personally relatively optimistic there. And so the biggest challenge, I believe, will be the integration into existing workflows. And that's why I'm personally very skeptical of last mile deliveries, for example, because you need to figure out how to take off in a delivery base. That's doable. But then landing in a garden, that's really tough. So we think as a company that point-to-point deliveries, for example, from a distribution center to a local distribution center, or from a medical distribution center to a hospital, those will be the first things that will be really deployed at scale. And Zipline, which is a great company that we know well, is doing that very successfully already in Rwanda.
What are the next steps for the company?
I think the immediate next step is to support drone manufacturers to bring to market products with Skynode. I think that effort started even before the launch of Skynode and will continue for the immediate future. Longer term, I think, as Lorenz mentioned, we want to offer the value to end users, to large companies deploying fleets of drones. And the key to do that is really to integrate this relatively new technology, drones, into their existing workflows. As Lorenz said, in logistics, that is the case, but as well in everything that considers a drone to be a data gathering platform. So really transferring the data safely from the camera, from the drone to the cloud, from the cloud to any application that makes that data useful, and then really circulating that information back to an enterprise's ERP system to make the data useful, to translate that, for example, in a purchase order or in a replacement job to replace a specific part of an equipment. And I think that is the part that as soon as we have choice in terms of vehicles available that use the Auterion platform, will be the part that we will dedicate our full attentions to really offer the enterprise, the end user, choice and flexibility when they think about integrating drones into their existing workflows.
Is this something that you're doing already? I mean, do you provide a service to enterprise users to help them integrate drones into their workflow?
So we're doing this already today with partners. There's, of course, in many, many cases, a data processing company already in a space active for various industries. We have various partners. And we then go in and help the enterprise user to design a workflow that is now online, no more SD cards, and leverages the processing capability of the partner or of their internal solution to create something that really allows them to just send somebody out with the drone. That person gets already a mission prescribed, so they just execute and get the data automatically into their ERP system. And so the ambition for us is not to create 3D models or anything like that, but to create business data that you can action on, which says, like, you know, how much inventory you have in numbers or anything like that.
What should an enterprise user do if they're interested in using Skynode?
They can initiate the discussion directly with us or through one of our partners. That can be an airframe manufacturer, like some of the ones that we have on our website that we partner with, or it can as well be a software company and analytics companies we work with. In the end, it's really a group effort. We're an ecosystem, and no matter what the entry point is, we're able to provide the full value to the end user independently of that. One example would be government users. And we have multiple projects with the US government. There we would act as the prime, as the company, as the system integrator, so to say, that pulls together the airframe, the analytics, the training, any additional service. It would offer that as a single package. We do that with enterprises as well, but that will be the only way we interface with government users.
Each of you have been in the drone industry for more than 10 years. So I'd like to ask, for each of you, what stands out in your mind as one of your most memorable experiences?
So to me, the most memorable experience probably was really back in 2008 when I started. Back then, really barely could buy the first MEMS IMUs, which is what is today in every smartphone. And I really had to build my first own IMU from hand, very arcane. And then with smartphones being commonplace and gaming on them being commonplace, these sensors went down from about $500 at the time, $500, $800 to like $5 and then to like $2 in a year or something like that. So that was really the inflection point. And I think what really enabled this industry in the end. And then the other memorable rift was around 2014 to 2016, when the industry got so compressed around one vendor that all the choice, all the startups, everything went completely away, and you only had one option as a consumer. However, the open source community that I led did soldier on, and now is in a really prime position for enterprise.
I think my most memorable moment goes back to 2016 when I was working at 3DR. We mapped the Atlanta airport which is one of or is actually the largest airport in the world if you measure it by number of passengers. I think they transport over 80 million passengers a year. And I think that event, from a user perspective, from an enterprise perspective, shook the industry because it showed for the first time that large-scale operations can be incorporated even inside the largest airport in the world, if that is coordinated with all the entities in place. So we worked with the FAA, with the airport, of course, with the city of Atlanta, and with the owners of the airport to enable that. That was, for me, really the first time where you could believably show that you can use this technology virtually everywhere, if in line with regulations.
What advice would you give to entrepreneurs today who want to start a new business in the drone industry?
I think that the number one, and probably the first one in a long list, but with a huge distance to the second, is to not reinvent the wheel. And so when you are starting a business or you want to implement new products, look around what is already available, look around what you can leverage in terms of components, in terms of software, in terms of technology. I see too many entrepreneurs, too many companies with their own engineering hubris start to, build everything from the ground up. And I think that is just a waste of resources, of time. And I think in our industry that we'll see a lot of consolidation in the future. It's just a waste of resources. So leverage existing solutions, existing technologies, and think about what the end user actually really wants.
For me, I've seen a lot of consumer drone companies die and go away over the last couple of years. And I think we will see a similar consolidation. So yeah, my advice is very similar. There is great open source software out there. It is the winning standard already in the enterprise space. There is a precedent with Linux having taken that position. And I can only advise to really build your startup, your company, your product around open source technology, and to be really focused on what your end customer really wants. And then my second piece of advice would be, don't believe that you can reach full autonomy for an enterprise use case really quickly, like tomorrow. So do not repeat all the mistakes of all the autonomous driving startups, and we will see the worst time of that industry in the next 1 or 2 years as it will consolidate. And so think of the really simple things that you can do to create value for your customer. Don't put technology first.
Is there anything that we miss that we should talk about?
What we are trying to do as a company overall culturally is to always create something that's open in nature and to leave value on the table. And standards are in a way required to do that because we don't want to force our solution on the whole industry, but at the same time, we want to be able to work with the whole industry. And so Auterion is leading a number of standardization processes around Pixhawk, but also around ASTM and ASD STAN to enable that.
This may be a rhetorical question. Is there a lot of support for standardization?
So we find that a lot of companies are seeking standardization, and it's even the ones that are already well positioned in the industry. So they're not coming from a position of weakness, but they do realize that it's, for example, extremely inefficient to build their own battery, or it's extremely inefficient to build their own sensor board, or even their own autopilot. So the good companies in our space are looking what's around and are trying to be efficient in creating value for their customers. And that is what has driven the creation of the Pixhawk standard that's built around the long legacy of the Pixhawk autopilot. And we're turning it in a way into the Bluetooth of drones. So what it does is it defines the physical interfaces, connectors, it defines the software interfaces, and then that allows you to have interoperability between a number of key components. For example, the autopilot becomes pluggable, so different vendors can create autopilots that fulfill the spec. They all run open source software then, of course. We have defined a payload bus, the Pixhawk payload bus, which is a mechanical, electrical, and software interface that allows you to create hot swappable gimbal payloads. And we're also creating standards for onboard actuators, so motor controllers, servos for control surfaces. And that's all part of that standard body. So it's really not like FAA standards for certification or regulation. It's industry standards like Bluetooth that enable different vendors to work together and allow the end customer to buy compatible devices.
What can listeners do to help facilitate open source standardization?
So Pixhawk is hosted by a collaborative project of the Linux Foundation, the Dronecode Foundation. And you can go on dronecode.org to see what the organization does. I would, however, recommend for the specific standards, go to pixhawk.org. There are the standard draft or already released standards, and you can check out how to engage with the existing companies and developers in the space.
And for my final question, Lorenz, what message would you like to leave regarding the future of autonomous flight operations?
I think the message we'd like to leave is that it's coming, and it's coming fast, and it's going to be open source.
That's it for episode 269 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Lorenz Meier and Kevin Sartori of Auterion. I want to thank Lorenz and Kevin for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Auterion, Skynode, or want to connect with Lorenz or Kevin, check out the website at auterion.com. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Gores.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research, and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.